Alright, so picking right up where I left off on the last video. Got the thing still curing in the paint booth over there. I'm really going to get to work on, cleaning up this firewall. Probably take this freaking plate out. It looks like crap the way it was put in there. And maybe I'm thinking about taking this out and, fairing it in here. Like putting a more flat piece in here and making it a little nicer, because this is for when there's a big block in here. You got to kind of smash it in to get the distributor to fit. So I'm not going to be needing that. The LS is a lot smaller than that big block, so I'm going to get right to work on this and remove these components, remove the washer, kind of get everything put out of the way so I can really start fairing this firewall in and getting it all dialed in for a coat of that satin black epoxy, and then satin black, getting it looking good so we can put that subframe in there with some confidence that it doesn't have to come back out. So I was working on these windshield wipers, and these bolts kind of rounded off. They're kind of like depressed in there, so I'm gonna go get some drills from up at our other shop and drill them out, because that's pretty much the only thing you can do once they're rounded off. Alright, got that out of there. Looks good. Definitely going to be a little project getting this all, cut out and then smoothed out, and probably fill that hole, because I am not going to be running a heater in this car. Doesn't need it. It's mainly going to be driven in the summer. It's not going to get all fogged up and, all the bad things of the wintertime. So what I'm going to do now is pull this dash out and, all the gauges and probably the steering column and pretty much everything out of here, because I am going to be doing a lot of welding in here with that roll cage and also the subframe connectors. And also, I'm not sure quite yet. I haven't made the decision of whether I'm going to pull this windshield out, but what I definitely am going to do if I don't pull it out is put a piece of cardboard over it, because the grinding sparks can be really detrimental to glass, any type of glass. It can like melt in there and it just ruins the glass. Happened on my green car, so I'm very conscientious not to let it happen again, because this is a solid windshield. So that's kind of the current project. I'm gonna get right to it and pull this dash and everything out. Should be pretty easy. Looks like, if I had to guess, there's probably some screws missing, so it shouldn't take long. All right, so preliminarily to getting the dash done, or the dash pulled out of here, I made these new sawhorses. Came out really freaking nice, because I need a little more table space, because I am going to be needing a little more space to tear down this LS. And as I said, for the dash, I'm going to need some space, so should have plenty. Putting this piece of cardboard on here. I'm not sure why it has this wood on here, so I'm going to be taking that off and then pasting it onto these, and we should be set, with quite a bit more space, which is always good. Alright, made the decision to take this front window out so it doesn't get damaged when I'm welding, the roll cage. I'm going to be welding up in this area, and pretty much would ruin the window if I, was welding right next to it. So what I'm going to use is, we made this tool a long time ago to take the window out of my green car, and you heat up this blade, and then you have a wire that's kind of next to it, and you pull on it, you can see. So I'm gonna do that, and we're also getting, you know, pretty much everything out of the inside so I can have lots of space for the, you know, to work on the roll cage and everything. Probably end up taking these doors off as well, just so I can, you know, have as much space as possible to make it as easy as possible. And call me crazy, but I really don't like how this doesn't line up, you know, with this. So what I'm planning on doing, I don't think these door bars are gonna work anyways with the cage that I'm, you know, gonna be putting in there, because it's gonna have a hoop that goes around the top and also bars that come down this way. So I think I'm gonna cut these out. I do plan on building the drift car one of these days, so having this extra tubing laying around is always helpful. And then I'm gonna cut the welds in the back and tilt this back a little bit so it lines up here and, you know, really looks nice, because like I said, attention to detail is kind of who I am. So we're making headway. I just got to pull this dash out and a couple more things, and then the interior is basically stripped out of this thing. So we're making lots of headway. Definitely a lot of work, but getting this windshield out will be a big milestone, and then I'll be able to grind and cut away, you know, freely without damaging anything, which is what we want. Alright, got that out. That definitely came out easier than I thought it would, or that I remember it would, or it did on the other car. So that's a big milestone. It came out in like, I don't know, 20-30 minutes. So these cars it's really common to get rust in this area because the water kind of trickles down. So I'm definitely going to be hitting this area with a wire brush and seeing what the metal looks like on both sides. But that's really good that I got that out, because now I just got to pull this dash out and, you know, kind of start cutting into stuff and, you know, getting that roll cage started and somewhat mocked up, and then we get her dialed in. All right, time to get these doors off. So I got most of the bolts out, just a couple are holding it in there. So I'm gonna get my dad and we're gonna take these doors off. Just take those couple bolts off, hold them, pull them off. All right, so I have this, you know, front hoop that goes from the back part of this roll cage to the front, and I'm using some baling wire on some of the headliner screws to kind of mock it up. And it's kind of dependent on how long this pipe is as to what I can do with this back part. As I said, I don't really like how it lines up there. So I'm gonna try and figure out how I can make it look correct. I think what might end up happening is I kick this bottom part out a little bit, and I would have to cut these welds, which would be a bummer. So I'm trying to figure out what to do there, still kind of trying to figure that out, but it's all dependent on how this front fits and, you know, if I can really cut those welds out in a nice way. So that's the current mission. All right, so got these windows protected. Looks really good. So I'm gonna start most likely with grinding these off because they look really crappy. And I'm not sure exactly what their purpose, you know, the purpose was to put the belts through here, but there's definitely a cleaner way to do it, and that's what I'm planning on doing. So I might be making more work for myself, but like I said, I take pride in making this stuff look good. I know if I don't do it, then I'll be looking at it and being like, should have done that. So we're making headway. I got this thing hanging. I don't know if it's really the best way to get it fitted up in there, but we'll figure something out. All right, didn't get to much today, but I'm gonna take a little break from working on the roll cage, and I'm gonna get the rest of this LS disassembled. It's kind of been sitting here, and I wanna check, excuse me, the bore taper, and also just kind of inspect the main bearings and make sure it's in decent condition, because I am planning, this is a Gen 3, early Gen 3, it's a 2000, out of a 2000 Silverado. So the Gen 3 rods are a lot weaker than the Gen 4 rods. So I'm definitely going to want to upgrade to that, but I might end up, just spending a little cash and get some good forged pistons and some aftermarket rods. I feel like the money's probably kind of worth it. Give it a little more longevity because, in a boosted application, you're running a lot more, or it's a lot more stress on the engine and the, connecting rods, pistons, crank. Crank sounds like it can take the power, but I definitely want to make sure to get a little bit of life out of the motor. So that's kind of my plan. After getting this oil pan off, there's definitely, if you look down in here, there's some sludge in this motor. So, I mean, it's not terrible, and it's not too apparent in the upper part of the engine, but this person definitely, whoever owned this, probably didn't change the oil that often. So I think it is going to be in my best interest to get this hot tanked and all cleaned up and kind of rebuilt. I don't know how the bearings are going to look, but I think that's a mission for tomorrow. It's pretty late. Switching gears again, so I'm going to put you guys on a time lapse and start cutting into this roll cage. Alright, been grinding away, freaking a lot of work, fixing this, but I think it'll be worth it in the end. So I got these bars out, and then I think we're going to make a plug-in for the plasma cutter that we have, so I can cut these welds a little easier and kick it forward. So I'm going to be kicking this forward a little bit, and it'll make it, I don't know, it'll look a lot better, and it'll also be, I think, more correct. I think that's kind of how it's meant to go in there. And then I'll put the door bars back in. Alright, sorry about that. Camera died. And then I'll be putting in, it's got bars that come down this way, and I think an X brace that goes in the back. And then I'll also be putting in, as I've mentioned, this top bar. And I'm hoping that the weather stays pretty good because it's so nice to do this outside. I don't know, if I was grinding like this inside, it makes such a big mess. So I'm going to put you guys on a time lapse. This is kind of, I don't know if it will be the most entertaining thing to watch, but I'll show you all the work that goes into it, at least for a couple minutes. Alright, that gives you a little taste of, all that goes into fabrication. It's definitely, how I describe it is, it reminds me of body work, where it's just like a ton of prep work to get it ready to be welded. Like if I was going to put this door bar in here, you just got to sit there and make sure it's all ground and notched, and then the welding takes, a few seconds, but getting it to where it needs to be welded takes forever. So I think I'm gonna Probably push this thing back in the garage and pick up maybe later. I don't know. It's getting a little cold out here, so we're making good progress though, so that's the main thing. Cheers. Make sure to wear a nuisance mask or respirator so you don't get all that in your lungs. Bad news. Alright, I got these broken loose on both sides, so now I'm going to cut these welds up here. It is kind of crazy, I'm going basically back to square one on this, but I read online that it is actually important to have a tilt in here because it makes a triangle. It actually makes it more structurally sound. So what I was going to say is I'm going to cut these welds and then kick this forward and build a box and then cut this tube to match the you know, the angle of that box, and then weld it and line it up with this. So that's the current project. I'll put you guys on a time lapse to get you more of that fabrication view, you know. Alright, you can see how I have this kind of tilted at the same orientation as this. So I think that's kind of the proper way to put these cages in. And then I prepped up here and got the notches a little better on those rear tubes. So I'm going to tack this thing in here. And once it's tacked in here, I'm going to make, you know, some boxes that go like with a flat plate this way and then come down and, you know, kind of tie into this floor area. I definitely have to remove these you know, harness bolts that the previous owner put in there, and then I'll build a box, you know, for the roll cage here and then cut it once I'm happy with it. And I think one thing I'll do to make it so it's kind of set while I'm working on it is put a little piece of metal up there to hold it up while I work down here. So that's the current project. I'm going to put some tacks on this thing and then we should be set to start working on these boxes. So after all these trials and tribulations, I'm actually thinking that I'm going to cut this out and put in the 1 5/8" roll cage so it's all the same. I don't know, I feel like I'm trying to make ice cream out of you-know-what with this. You know, it's so far off the ground. And it's actually going to be a lot more work to put this in. So, you know, this is kind of hot rodding where you might be doing, you know, thinking you're doing something right and then it turns out to be wrong. Oh no! And sometimes you just got to make that call. So I'm going to cut that out. I'm not going to videotape it because you guys saw it's kind of monotonous. And then I'm going to use all this fresh tubing and I'm going to save this 1 3/4 tubing for a drift car. So it's interesting, 1 3/4 tubing is made for a roll cage or a roll bar, which is like, you know, just the main hoop and then the rear struts and then door bars. And you can go with 1 5/8 for a roll cage, you know, a little smaller diameter tubing. So I think that's kind of the proper, you know, thing going forward. So kind of an epic fail, but you know, such is life. So hope you enjoyed watching me fail like I did. And I'm trying to be transparent with this YouTube channel. So you got to show the good and the bad. So thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and hope you have a good day. Cheers. Hey, thanks for stopping into the Bluebird Enterprises YouTube channel. If you like what you saw, give me a big thumbs up, and hopefully you're leaving with a bigger smile than you came in with.